I wasn't going to do a video on this, but it's come to the point where somebody has to speak up. So it's time to call some people out. The Canadian media's hockey coverage lately, specifically in regards to the Montreal Canadiens, has been embarrassing and disappointing to witness. Certain journalists and networks are producing tabloid quality content, and it needs to stop. Sportsnet is one of many. Now, I like Sportsnet. They're in no way all bad. I actually quite enjoy a lot of their content. But the fact that they endorse the type of content I was previously referring to is what I take issue with. Now, to give you an example of this, I'm going to talk specifically about Max Pacioretty's contract negotiations or his eventual trade and how that's being portrayed by this network and the journalists and entertainers that are employed to do so. Pacioretty's current contract will expire at the end of this coming season. He's an elite goal scorer. He's 29 years old. The Montreal Canadiens are in a transition phase. Habs management is currently working through a very delicate situation. In a perfect world, I'm sure Marc Bergevin would love to throw a ton of money at Pacioretty and keep him with the Canadiens long term because he's a very important part of the team and our captain. But in a hard salary cap sports league, it does not quite work that way. A potentially franchise-altering decision has to be made, and Habs management are taking their time with this decision, which is responsible. I would expect nothing less from a management team that is running a billion-dollar franchise. The difficult decision that has to be made is, do they try to find some common ground and negotiate a new contract with Max Pacioretty? That's a difficult task in itself. Or do they trade Max Pacioretty for multiple assets to help them in the future? Another difficult task. The fact that Max Pacioretty admittedly had one of the worst seasons of his career last year makes these decisions even more difficult. Obviously, there's a human element and feelings involved, but at the end of the day, it's a business. Max, just like every other player in the NHL, knows this and is prepared for it, even though at times it can be quite difficult. What is not needed is the media making it more difficult than what it needs to be. Reports surfaced at the trade deadline last year that Max Pacioretty would be traded. He was not traded. Reports then surfaced again at the draft that he would be traded. Again, he was not traded. A few months later, reports surfaced that the Montreal Canadiens were not willing to negotiate a contract offer with Max Pacioretty. It's important to know that these reports have not been confirmed and are at best pure speculation. This type of information is typically confidential, with the media not being privy to it. So they either, one, got information from someone close to these apparent trade or negotiation discussions, or two, it's bullshit and it's made up. I don't have an opinion on whether it's one of those two things, and quite honestly, I don't care. What I do care about is that the Canadian media has used these unconfirmed reports to create false narratives and push their interior motives to their huge national viewership, who takes their word as fact because the people putting out these stories are labeled as journalists and reporters, when in actuality, a lot of what is being sent out to the masses are extreme opinion pieces with cherry-picked quotes and zero evidence to back up their absurd claims. Now, a specific example of this is what happened Tuesday just outside of Montreal. Canadiens captain and elite goal scorer Max Pacioretty held a charity golf tournament to raise money for sick and injured children and to support the Montreal Canadiens Foundation on behalf of his own foundation. The media were invited to bring exposure to this event, but instead turned it into a theatrical show and an opportunity to bring ratings to their network and clicks to their website by throwing gas onto their fake controversy. Max handled the media scrums with class and respectfully answered questions, even the ones regarding his contract situation, which he did not necessarily want to speak about because the event was for charity and the focus should have been on that. Canadiens owner Jeff Molson and GM Marc Bergevin also attended the tournament, despite more false reports that came out a couple weeks ago that they would not attend. And they also handled the media scrums and photo ops respectfully and appropriately. They were there to support their team's captain and focus on the charitable efforts that were taking place. Both parties were asked about the current status of their relationship. Both parties said it was fine. GM Marc Bergevin did not discuss contract negotiations, but this has been consistent with Marc Bergevin through his entire tenure as Montreal Canadiens general manager. He will not discuss contract negotiations for any player currently under contract by the Montreal Canadiens. Furthermore, he should not be expected to at a charity event. Following the media scrums, while the actual golfing was taking place, news articles were released by Sportsnet, among many others, as well as a TV segment produced by the Tim and Sid Show, that mostly overlooked what the event was held for and detailed it as an uncomfortable encounter between the two parties, and then continued to bash Marc Bergevin for refusing to discuss his intentions with Max Pacioretty, and even went as far as to suggest that the two parties should have faked some sort of overly friendly engagement or statement to the media, and then also strongly suggested, with zero proof, that Max Pacioretty's time with the Canadiens is coming to an end. This is the type of sports coverage that is completely and utterly unacceptable. Think of the children and their families that these charities support that may be tuning into Sportsnet to get coverage on this charity golf event that the Montreal Canadiens captain is holding, or the Habs fans that want to tune into Sportsnet and hear about the positive impact that their captain is having on his community, but instead are berated with a ridiculous amount of negative opinions that have nothing to do with the event itself, and provided with not much discussion about what Max is doing with his foundation for the community. Max has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Montreal Children's Hospital and has donated his own money to the cause as well. His foundation also recently donated a high-performance MRI machine for the traumatic brain injury department. He's a great man and a great captain of the Montreal Canadiens, and Habs management have always supported him in his charitable efforts. So sports networks who endorse this type of content and media members who acted as unprofessionally as they did on Tuesday should be ashamed and held accountable in some way for their disrespectful antics surrounding an event that should have been portrayed in a positive light for both parties, as they are engaging in the act of helping and giving, while also sharing time together, playing a sport that they all enjoy during their time in the off-season away from hockey. That's the truth about what happened on Tuesday. And isn't that what good journalism is about? Reporting the truth? I understand these people have jobs to do, but there is still a line they should not cross. And they have definitely been crossing that line more often lately. Max Pacioretty, Marc Bergevin, and Jeff Molson's intentions were in the right place on Tuesday, despite there possibly being some tension between them during this time when the Canadiens have to make a very difficult decision that will also affect Max's career. Most of the Canadian media's intentions, on the other hand, were not in the right place. Training camp is only a few weeks away, and then there will be plenty of time through the hockey season to drum up these controversies about Max's contract situation, among other things. This is just one glaring example of how the Canadian hockey media is becoming tabloid quality and overly intrusive, specifically in Montreal. So to the fans, don't trust everything you hear from these so-called insiders and entertainers. And when you see Habs management or players getting short with the media, know that it's because they're getting frustrated with the disrespect that is being shown towards them. And they are in no way upset with the fans at all. The Montreal Canadiens respect their fans greatly. They always have. I'll leave you with this. Let's not forget how this media circus kicked off in the first place, when what these people should have been doing is pumping up fans for what should be a very exciting season for the Montreal Canadiens. Cheers, guys. Go Habs, go. Woo!